Okay, hi. A very good friend of mine has a 4-year-old son, and this weekend when we were all hanging out together, he asked me about Mycrogrid. I confessed to him the difference between Mycrogrid and everything I did for 20 years as a prior company, and he said it makes sense. How can you break that down so that my son can understand? And I thought, well, we could use action figures. So I don't really have action figures here. I do have a Gandhi, and I do have a an Einstein, and this was given to me as a gift. This is supposed to be me. I don't know. So we're gonna try this. So what did I do for 20 years? Came along and I spoke to Mr. Gandhi and Mr. Einstein. They wanted solar. I said, great, we have solar, which will collect and generate energy and take care of all of your home's needs. Let's connect it for you. So this is a connection to the utility grid. This is representing the grid and the big monster that's out there and has been out there for 130 years. So we connected. Gandhi and Einstein fed the grid, and all during the day when their home's entire electric load was satisfied. And then if there were any additional electrons that their home didn't need, it would just feed this direction into the grid. At nighttime, when the sun shut the system off, because without sunlight the solar wouldn't work, they would then draw from the grid, and they would uh, get credited for what they put in the daytime at a certain rate. And then the fun was that they would take back that energy in credits. They would take it back at a much more expensive cost. Okay, they were satisfied with that. There was no independence. And they were used to the relationship with the utility because the utility essentially became a giant storage battery for them. Well, time progressed over the 20 years of my installing this solar in this bidirectional relationship. And after a while, when we saw outages, and so here I will demonstrate an outage. When the big utility over there has an outage, their lights went out. So Gandhi would say, well, this really stinks because we have solar. And Einstein said, yes, Gandhi, the solar won't operate when the grid goes down. So Gandhi said, he called me and said, hey, Vince, what can you do about that? Well, along the way, back in the early teens, I had installed battery systems and created a non-export relationship for this home, meaning I would put batteries in and I would connect the battery in a relationship with the solar. And that would allow, in the event of a blackout from the grid, from this relationship, it would allow the home to be totally energy independent. So that was a wonderful thing. As time went on and technology got better, Einstein started to ask me about better batteries and a way that we could perhaps decouple them from the grid so that they wouldn't be dependent on that grid and they wouldn't have to keep feeding that grid all of that great solar energy at a certain rate, getting paid for it, credited for it by the utility, and then at nighttime taking it back at a higher rate. So I said, yeah, absolutely. I can connect the battery so that the battery takes excess energy from your solar. So at nighttime, if you like, you can share the energy from your battery with the grid if you choose, or you can use it in a closed loop system. And he said, I like that idea because I would be storing energy in my battery at a much lower rate than what I'll have to pay to get my credits back from what I fed into the grid, because this is a big greedy monster as a massive 130-year-old antiquated corporation, they don't like to pay very much for the energy they're receiving, but they certainly like to charge for it. So I'd like to store it at a lower cost. I said, cool, I'll put that battery in. Then the years progressed, and this battery became super smart, where it could actually go into what's called a non-export mode, which I wrote about in 2015. A non-export mode means now you have a closed loop relationship between the solar and the battery. You can still be tied to this grid, and you can use this grid as backup. But now this is the home's primary method for staying charged. And Gandhi was interested and happy with that, and because of the independence and this whole non-export solution. And Einstein said, this is great. Can you put enough batteries in there to power our home 24/7, 365? And I said, at the moment, the Achilles heel in this equation is that the batteries aren't dense enough or have the energy density that allows us to do that. But I can come in and set you up for true energy independence and allow you down the road to go to the utility and essentially cut that cord. So now the utility can go bye-bye, because you won't need them for backup, because the ultimate goal in cutting the cord with Mycrogrid is that you have enough battery storage so that when your solar does shut down, because that big nuclear power plant in the sky, 96 million miles away, when it shuts down at nighttime or goes to the other side of our planet, the solar shuts down, and now your batteries turn on and power Gandhi and Einstein's home completely. The next morning, that sun comes up, it starts its photovoltaic reaction with the solar panel, immediately charges those batteries up to 100%. The solar takes care of the live load in Gandhi and Einstein's home. And then at nighttime, the cycle continues, where the batteries will then take on the entire load of the home. That is the modern microgrid model. That is the initiative that we are now pushing forward. And that grid is gone.